On December the 20th, 1968, in Benicia, California, high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were on their first date, planning to attend a Christmas concert at their high school, Hogan High, not far from Betty's home. However, their plans changed, instead visiting a friend before stopping at a nearby restaurant for a meal. Afterwards, the couple proceeded to Lake Herman Road, where David parked at around 10:15 p.m. This area was known for being the local makeout spot for couples. Just 45 minutes later, their dead bodies would be discovered by a neighbor, Stella Borges, and the police were called. It's believed that not long before their bodies were discovered, another car pulled up and parked beside them. The killer would have exited their vehicle and possibly ordered the couple to do the same. Forensic analysis theorized that Betty left the car first, but when David was only halfway out, he was shot in the head. The murderer proceeded to then shoot Betty 5 times in the back as she tried to escape before driving off. Her body was found 28 feet away from her boyfriend's car. There was no evidence to give the police any leads whatsoever. 8 months later, on July the 4th, 1969, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau drove into the Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California, just 4 miles from the location of the last murder, and parked up. Oddly, as they sat in their car, another vehicle pulled up and parked beside them, but then almost immediately it drove away again. Around 10 minutes passed before the exact same car returned and parked behind them instead. The driver then got out of the vehicle and approached the passenger side of theirs, carrying a flashlight and a 9mm Luger. They shone the flashlight into their eyes before shooting 5 bullets at the couple. They were both hit, but several bullets actually passed through Michael and got Darlene, connecting with them both. The murderer initially walked away, but then heard Michael moaning in agony, to which he returned, shot them both twice more before finally driving away. In the early hours of the next morning, a man phoned up the police department and confessed to the attack, as well as the previous one back in December. The call was traced to a gas station at Springs Road near Darlene's home and not far from the police department. Darlene would unfortunately pass away at the hospital, though Michael actually survived, despite being shot in the face, neck, and chest. He described the killer as being around 26 to 30 years old, 195 to 200 pounds, 5'8", a white male with short, light brown curly hair. Though he did confess that it was dark and it all happened so quickly, he didn't get a proper good look at the man. The next month, on August the 1st, 3 letters were received by several newspaper outlets, almost completely identical. A psychiatrist analysed these writings and concluded that they were written by a person who was brooding and most certainly isolated from society. Dear Editor, I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl last 4th of July. To prove this, I shall state some facts which only I and the police know. Christmas. 1. Brand name of ammo, Super X. 2. 10 shots fired. 3. Boy was on his back with feet to car. 4. Girl was lying on right side, feet to west. 4th of July. 1. Girl was wearing patterned pants. 2. Boy was also shot in knee. 3. Ammo was made by Western. Here is part of a cipher. The other 2 parts of this cipher are being mailed to the editors of the Vallejo Times and San Francisco Examiner. I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper. In this cipher is my identity. If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Friday the 1st of August 1969, I will go on a kill rampage Friday night. I will cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. Each letter included a 408 symbol cryptogram, supposedly including the man's identity. However, although they only partially complied to his request, showing only a third of the cryptogram in their paper and not even on the front page, they still weren't 100% certain that this was the real killer, and they wanted more evidence. But despite not following his demands, no other murders took place that night as he threatened. On August 7th, 1969, another letter was received, for the first time ever coining his now iconic name. Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. In answer to your asking for more details about the good times I have had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy to supply even more material. By the way, are the police having a good time with the code? If not, tell them to cheer up. When they do crack it, they will have me. On the 4th of July, I did not open the car door. The window was rolled down already. The boy was originally sitting in the front seat when I began firing. When I fired the first shot at his head, he leaped backwards at the same time, thus spoiling my aim. He ended up on the back seat, then the floor and back, thrashing out very violently with his legs. That's how I shot him in the knee. I did not leave the scene of the killing with squealing tires and a racing engine as described in the Vallejo paper. I drove away quite slowly so as not to draw attention to my car. The man who told the police that my car was brown was a Negro, about 40 to 45, rather shabbily dressed. I was at this phone booth having some fun with the Vallejo cops when he was walking by. When I hung up, the damn thing began to ring, and that drew his attention to me in my car. Last Christmas, in that episode, the police were wondering as to how I could shoot and hit my victims in the dark. They did not openly state this, but implied this by saying it was a well-lit night and I could see the silhouettes on the horizon. Bullshit. That area is surrounded by high hills and trees. What I did was tape a small pencil flashlight to the barrel of my gun. If you notice, in the center of the beam of light, if you aim it at a wall or ceiling, you will see a black or dark spot in the center of the circle of light, about 3 to 6 inches across. When taped to a gun barrel, the bullet will strike exactly in the center of the black dot in the light. All I had to do was spray them as if it was a water hose. There was no need to use the gun sights. I was not happy to see that I did not get front page coverage. The reason for him calling himself the Zodiac has never been identified. The next day, on August the 8th, locals Donald and Betty Harden believed they had actually cracked the cryptogram. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and they I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collection of slaves for my afterlife. The letter ends with a random collection of letters, which people have attempted to decipher over the years, though some think it was merely a bunch of gibberish. The meaning has never been identified. On September the 27th, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were having a picnic at Lake Benicia when a white man, about 5'11", 170 pounds, and combed greasy brown hair approached them, wearing a hood with sunglasses, a bib-like device over his chest with a white 3x3-inch cross circle symbol upon it. The man carried a gun and claimed to be an escaped convict from a jail with a 2-word name in either Colorado or Montana. It's believed to have been Deer Lodge, and he claimed he killed a guard and stole a car, but now he needs theirs and money to get to Mexico undetected. He had some plastic and demanded that Cecilia use it to tie up Brian before he himself tied up Cecilia. However, the killer double-checked and she hadn't even tied Brian up properly. Brian had believed that this was just a mugging, until the man pulled out a knife and started stabbing them both repeatedly. The killer then hiked 500 yards back up to Knoxville Road before drawing the bizarre symbol on Brian's car door with a pen, and then carving the dates of all of these deaths with his knife. At 7:40 p.m, the man then called the county sheriff's office to report his latest crime. The call was traced and the payphone found just minutes later, still off the hook, but no caller was discovered. However, the killer left a still fresh palm print on the telephone, though to this day this print would never match any suspect. A man and his son were fishing in a nearby cove when they heard the victim's screams for help and found them. Cecilia was still awake and was able to describe the attacker, who at one point did remove the hood. But unfortunately, Cecilia Shepard fell into a coma on the way to the hospital and would never awaken, dying 2 days later. But Brian Hartnell survived and lived to tell the tale, describing his attacker vividly. 2 weeks later, on October the 11th, 1969, cab driver Paul Stein picked up a white male passenger at the Mason and Geary Streets intersection in San Francisco, heading for Presidio Heights. During the drive, the passenger suddenly shot the driver in the head before taking his wallet, car keys, and a section of his blood-stained shirt with him. However, across the street, 3 teenagers witnessed the killer escaping at 9:55 PM and called the police immediately. They saw him wiping the cab down before leaving. 2 blocks away, 2 officers saw a white man perfectly matching the description except being marginally older walking along Jackson Street. However, they didn't approach him. This man did match the description, but the radio dispatcher had accidentally alerted all officers to be looking for a black suspect. These cops believed they were actually in the presence of the Zodiac Killer and were in the correct position to make an arrest. But due to this misinformation, he was able to just walk away. On October the 14th, yet another letter showed up, including the piece of bloody shirt, taking responsibility for the new murder. This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington Street and Maple Street last night. To prove this, here is a bloodstained piece of his shirt. I am the same man who did in the people in the North Bay area. The San Francisco police could have caught me last night if they had searched the park properly, instead of holding road races with their motorcycles, seeing who could make the most noise. The car drivers should have just parked their cars and sat there quietly, waiting for me to come out of cover. School children make nice targets. I think I should wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out. All of the witnesses came together to put together a composite sketch of the murderer, and they now had a solid description of who they were looking for, though around 2,500 suspects were being investigated. On October the 20th, 1969, at 2 PM, a man claiming to be the Zodiac Killer actually called the police department, demanding that one of 2 lawyers appear on the KGO TV talk show. He wanted either F. Lee Bailey, who wasn't available, or Melvin Belli, who agreed. And bizarrely, someone claiming to be the Zodiac Killer actually called up the talk show and claimed to be called Sam.
Get a kill.
Talk to us. Just tell us what's going on inside you right now, Sam, please.
I have headache.
All right. How long have you had those headaches, Sam? In a long time?
Since I killed a kid.
If it all boils down to the question of you're giving yourself up, if you could be assured that you wouldn't get capital punishment for myself.
I don't want to give myself up.
I
want to kill those kids.
Belli even agreed to meet with him in person, but the killer never showed up. On November the 8th, 1969, the killer sent another cryptogram, and this one would remain unsolved for over 51 years. It wasn't until December the 5th, 2020, when it was finally deciphered by some private citizens, which consisted of engineers and mathematicians. I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know what my new life is. Life will be an easy one in paradise, death. The next day, another letter followed. This is the Zodiac speaking. Up to the end of October, I have killed 7 people. I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me, so I shall change the way the collecting of slaves. I shall no longer announce to anyone. When I commit my murders, they shall look like routine robberies, killings of anger, and a few fake accidents, etc. The police shall never catch me because I have been too clever for them. 1. I look like the description passed out only when I do my thing. The rest of the time, I look entirely different. I shall not tell you what my disguise consists of when I kill. 2. As of yet, I have left no fingerprints behind me, contrary to what the police say. In my killings, I wear transparent fingertip guards. All it is 2 coats of airplane cement coated on my fingertips. Quite unnoticeable and very effective. 3. My killing tools have been bought through the mail order outfits before the ban went into effect, except one, and it was bought out of the state. So as you can see, the police don't have much to work on. If you wonder why I was wiping the cab down, I was leaving fake clues for the police to run all over town with. As one might say, I gave the cops some busy work to do to keep them happy. I enjoy needling the blue pigs. Hey blue pig, I was in the park. You were using fire trucks to mask the sound of your cruising prowl cars. The dogs never came within 2 blocks of me, and they were to the west, and there was only 2 groups of parking, about 10 minutes apart. Then the motorcycles went by, about 150 feet away, going from south to northwest. P.S. 2 cops pulled a goof about 3 minutes after I left the cab. I was walking down the hill to the park when this cop car pulled up, and one of them called me over and asked if I saw anyone acting suspicious or strange in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And I said yes. There was this man who was running by, waving a gun, and the cops peeled rubber and went around the corner as I directed them, and I disappeared into the park a block and a half away, never to be seen again. Hey pig, doesn't it roll you up to have your nose rubbed in your boo-boos? If you cops think I'm going to take on a bus the way I stated I was, you deserve to have holes in your heads. Take 1 bag of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and 1 gallon of stove oil, and dump a few bags of gravel on top and then set the shit off, and it will positively ventilate anything that should be in the way of the blast. The death machine is already made. I would have sent you pictures, but you would be nasty enough to trace them back to the developer and then to me, so I shall describe my masterpiece to you. The nice part of it is all the parts can be bought on the open market with no questions asked. 1 battery-powered clock will run for approximately 1 year. 1 photoelectric switch, 2 copper leaf springs, 2 6-volt car batteries, 1 flashlight bulb and reflector, 1 mirror, 2 18-inch cardboard tubes, black with shoe polish inside and out. The system checks out from one end to the other in my tests. What you do not know is whether the death machine is at the site or whether it is being stored in my basement for future use. I think you do not have the manpower to stop this one by continually searching the roadsides looking for this thing. And it won't do to reroute and reschedule the buses because the bomb can be adapted to new conditions. Have fun. By the way, it could be rather messy if you try to bluff me. P.S. Be sure to print the part I marked out on page 3 or I shall do my thing. To prove I am the Zodiac, ask the Vallejo cop about my electric gun sight which I used to start collecting my slaves. On December the 20th, 1 year to the day of the first killing, the Zodiac mailed a letter to Belli with another part of the bloody shirt, asking for his help. Dear Melvin, this is the Zodiac speaking. I wish you a happy Christmas. The one thing I ask of you is this, please help me. I cannot reach out for help because of this thing in me won't let me. I am finding it extremely difficult to hold it in check. I am afraid I will lose control again and take my 9th and possibly 10th victim. Please help me, I am drowning. At the moment the children are safe from the bomb because it is so massive to dig in and the trigger mechanism requires much work to get it adjusted just right. But if I hold back too long from now on I will lose control of myself and set the bomb up. Please help me, I cannot remain in control for much longer. On March the 20th, 1970, 22-year-old Kathleen Johns was driving from San Bernardino, California to Petaluma to visit her mother. She was 7 months pregnant and had her 10-month-old daughter with her as well. As she was driving on Highway 132, a car behind her began honking its horn and flashing its headlights, leading to her pulling over. The man parked behind her before approaching the vehicle. He claimed that her right rear wheel was wobbling and offered to tighten it for her. He finished the tyre before driving away. However, as soon as Kathleen went to depart herself, the wheel almost immediately came off the car. The man did return and offered to drive her and her daughter to the nearest gas station for assistance, before they both climbed into his car. During the drive, the man went past several service stations, but never attempted to stop. For about an hour and a half, he drove back and forth, and whenever she asked why he wasn't stopping, he would change the subject. He eventually slowed down at an intersection, which is when Kathleen jumped out of the car with her baby daughter and hid in a field. One report claimed she watched the man search for them using a flashlight, promising not to hurt her, but then he eventually gave up and drove away, while her statement claims he never even left the car and just drove off. Kathleen then hitched a ride to the police station to tell her story, and whilst there, she noticed a composite sketch of the Zodiac Killer, and recognized him as the man who had abducted her. The police hid her in a dark restaurant while they located her car, but it had since been destroyed and torched. There were even some reports that the man threatened to kill them both during the drive, but most dispute this claim. On April the 20th, 1970, another letter followed, allegedly giving away his name in yet another code. This is the Zodiac speaking. By the way, have you cracked the last cipher I sent you? My name is... I am mildly curious as to how much money you have on my head now. I hope you do not think that I was the one who wiped out that blue meanie with a bomb at the cop station, even though I talked about killing school children with one. It just wouldn't do to move in on someone else's territory. But there is more glory in killing a cop than a kid because a cop can shoot back. I have killed 10 people to date. It would have been a lot more except that my bus bomb was a dud. I was swamped out by the rain we had a while back. On April the 28th, a greeting card was posted. I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast. If you don't want me to have this blast, you must do 2 things. 1. Tell everyone about the bus bomb with all of the details. 2. I would like to see some nice Zodiac buttons wandering about town. Everyone else has these buttons like Black Power, Melvin Eats Blubber, etc. Well, it would cheer me up considerably if I saw a lot of people wearing my button. Please no nasty ones like Melvin's. Thank you. On June the 26th, 1970, another letter followed. This is the Zodiac speaking. I have become very upset with the people of the San Fran Bay Area. They have not complied with my wishes for them to wear some nice Zodiac buttons. I promised to punish them if they did not comply by annihilating a full school bus. But now school is out for the summer, so I punished them in another way. I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38. The map coupled with this code will tell you where the bomb is set. You have until next fall to dig it up. The murder he's referring to may be Sergeant Richard Radertick. A week earlier, on June the 19th at 5:25 PM, he was writing a parking ticket in his car when someone showed up and shot him in the head. He would die 15 hours later. Though the police believe the Zodiac actually had nothing to do with it, and this murder remains officially unsolved. The code that was supposed to reveal the location of the explosive was never deciphered, and the bomb was never located. This is the Zodiac speaking. I am rather unhappy because you people will not wear some nice Zodiac buttons, so I now have a little list starting with the woman and her baby that I gave a rather interesting ride for a couple hours one evening a few months back that ended in my burning her car where I found them. In one of these letters, the killer left a clue for the code and coordinates, and it would later be discovered that it revealed 2 locations of his previous attacks. On October the 27th, 1970, a bizarre Halloween card was sent and signed from him, and it was believed to have been completely legitimate. This even became front page news as it was perceived as a threat for even more murders. It's only been confirmed that he killed 5 and injured 2, though in some exchanges he claimed to have killed as many as 37. There have been many other murders that have been theorized could have been from the same man, but nothing can be definitive. On June the 4th, 1963, 5 years before the first confirmed killing, 18-year-old Robert Domingos and 17-year-old Linda Edwards were shot dead on a beach near Gaviota. There are some similarities to this attack and the one at Lake Berryessa 6 years later, but nothing is known for certain. On October the 30th, 1966, 18-year-old Cherry Jo Bates spent the evening at the Riverside Community College campus in the library, which closed at 9 PM. Neighbors reportedly heard a scream at around 10:30. She was found dead the next morning, stabbed and nearly completely decapitated. It wasn't until 4 years later it was suspected that the Zodiac Killer had something to do with it due to the similar circumstances of the attacks. Wires in her car's distributor cap had been removed and a man's Timex watch with a torn wristband was found nearby. The watch had stopped at 12:24, though it's believed the attack took place much earlier. On November the 29th, 1966, just a month after she was killed, nearly identical letters were sent to the press and police confessing to the murder and providing details that weren't public knowledge at the time. She was young and beautiful, but now she is battered and dead. She is not the first and she will not be the last. I lay awake at night thinking about my next victim. Maybe she will be the beautiful blonde that babysits near the little store and walks down the dark alley each evening about 7. Or maybe she will be the shapely blue-eyed brunette that said no when I asked her for a date in high school. But maybe it will not be either, but I shall cut off her female parts and deposit them for the whole city to see. So don't make it easy for me. Keep your sisters, daughters and wives off the streets and alleys. Miss Bates was stupid. She went went to the slaughter like a lamb. She did not put up a struggle, but I did. It was a ball. I first pulled the middle wire from the distributor, then I waited for her in the library and followed her out after 2 minutes. The battery must have been about dead by then. I then offered to help. She was then very willing to talk with me. I told her that my car was down the street and that I would give her a lift home. When we were away from the library walking, I said it was about time. She asked me, about time for what? I said it was about time for her to die. I grabbed her around the neck with my hand over her mouth and my other hand with a small knife at her throat. She went very willingly. Her breast felt very warm and firm under my hands. But only one thing was on my mind, making her pay for the brush-offs that she had given me during the years prior. She died hard. She squirmed and shook as I choked her and her lips twitched. She let out a scream once and I kicked her head to shut her up. I plunged the knife into her and it broke. I then finished the job, cutting her throat. I am not sick. I am insane. But that will not stop the game. This letter should be published for all to read it. It just might save that girl in the alley. But that's up to you. It will be on your conscience, not mine. Yes, I did make that call to you also. It was just a warning. Beware. I am stalking your girls now. The writing did match the later Zodiac letters and it was signed with the initials RH. Police concluded that this was in fact written by the Zodiac Killer. On April the 30th, 1967, 6 months to the date of Cherry Jo Bates' murder, her father, the press and the police all received nearly identical letters claiming Bates had to die. There will be more. It was signed with the letter Z, though this was before the killer was even known as the Zodiac, and this wouldn't be linked to him until March the 13th, 1971. This is the Zodiac speaking. Like I have always said, I am crack proof. If the blue meanies are ever going to catch me, they had best get off their fat asses and do something, because the longer they fiddle and fart around, the more slaves I will collect for my afterlife. I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. The reason I'm writing to the Times is this: they don't bury me on the back pages like some of the others. Despite this evidence and confession, officially the murder of Cherry Jo Bates hasn't been conclusively connected to the Zodiac Killer, as the police believed he just falsely took credit and it remains unsolved. However, it did lead to Ross Sullivan becoming a suspect. He was a library assistant at the college at the time, and several co-workers claimed he went missing for several days after the murder took place. He does resemble the sketches of the killer, and he wore similar boots that matched footprints found at the scene of the previous murders. Sullivan was hospitalized several times for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, but he's never been officially identified as the Zodiac Killer. 25-year-old Donna Lass was last seen on September the 6th, 1970 in State Line, Nevada. She worked until around 2 a.m, but later that same day, her boss and landlord both received a strange phone call from a man claiming that she had left town due to a family emergency. She was never seen again. It wasn't until March the 22nd the next year when a letter arrived, vaguely claiming responsibility for her disappearance, showing areas of the last sighting. A supposed gravesite was found nearby and dug up, but only a pair of sunglasses was discovered, and nothing definitively connected this to the Zodiac Killer. One of the more popular suspects is Arthur Lee Allen, who endured several search warrants over the span of 20 years, many believing he is the most likely suspect. He was in the area of the Lake Berryessa attack at the time, though he claims he was scuba diving at Sail Point despite previously telling his family that he would be going to Lake Berryessa. He would allegedly come home covered in blood and with a bloody knife in his car. He was interviewed early on but let go, though he was brought back up again in 1971 when his friend claimed he spoke to them about his desire to kill people. He referred to himself as the Zodiac before the killer had even used it, and he was talking about strapping a flashlight to a gun to be able to see at night. Allen was discharged from the US Navy in 1958 and was fired as an elementary school teacher in March 68 after being accused of sexual misconduct with his students. He was well liked by those around him, but he was also described as being angry towards women and fascinated with young children, though he reportedly never had a wife or girlfriend. Furthermore, Allen's favourite book was The Most Dangerous Game, a book about hunting humans and a book that the Zodiac even references in one of his letters. Allen even owned a watch at the time that had the same symbol on it that the Zodiac signed all of his letters with. In September 1972, the police gained the first search warrant for his home and found small dissected animals in a freezer, some bloody knives and some sexual devices, but nothing to directly connect him to the murders. It wasn't until 2 years on when he was arrested for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy. He pled guilty and served 2 years, which was around the time the press received no letters from the killer. In 1987, inmate Ralph Spinelli claimed that Allen confessed to him that he murdered the cab driver Paul Stine. In 1991, Michael Mageau, who survived and saw the killer without his mask on, was interviewed and shown a photo lineup, and he pointed out Arthur Lee Allen as being the Zodiac Killer. Allen's home was searched again, and they discovered bomb formulas as well as fully constructed bombs and several tapes about the Zodiac Killer, though Allen denied being involved. He would pass away in 1992, and just 2 days after his death, the police again searched his home. This time they managed to find a Royal typewriter with an elite type, which is the exact same type as the one used by the Zodiac Killer. He owned and wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch and lived nearby to where a lot of the attacks took place. In 2002, the police developed a DNA profile from the saliva on stamps and envelopes from the Zodiac and compared them to Allen, and they even compared it to his friend who accused him, but the DNA didn't match either, and both men were discarded as the culprit. Though allegedly, Allen had a tendency to get others to lick his stamps for him when he wrote his letters, which would explain why his DNA wouldn't match, though he looks nothing like the composite sketch. Regardless, Allen's handwriting was analysed, but it was concluded that it didn't even come close to the Zodiac's, though some still maintain to this day that he is the most likely suspect. He was officially ruled out by the police. For about 3 years, no further letter followed, and the murderer seemed to vanish, until January the 29th, 1974. I saw and think The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. Signed, yours truly. He plunged himself into the billowy wave, and an echo arose from the suicide's grave. Tit Willow, Tit Willow, Tit Willow. P.S. If I do not see this note in your paper, I will do something nasty, which you know I'm capable of doing. Dear Mr. Editor, did you know that the initials Slay spell slay, an Old Norse word meaning kill? A friend. This was believed to have been an attempt to help decipher some earlier codes, but the handwriting didn't match previous letters and it was never taken further, and believed to have been just a hoax. Sirs, I would like to express my consternation concerning your poor taste and lack of sympathy for the public, as evidenced by your running of the ads for the movie Badlands, featuring the blurb. In 1959, most people were killing time. Kit and Holly were killing people. In light of recent events, this kind of murder glorification can only be deplorable at best, not that glorification of violence was ever justifiable. Why don't you show some concern for public sensibilities and cut the ad? A citizen. The handwriting and tone all matched the Zodiac Killers. Editor, put Marco back in the hellhole from whence he came. He has a serious psychological disorder, always needs to feel superior. I suggest you refer him to a shrink. Meanwhile, cancel the Count Marco column. Since the Count can write anonymously, so can I. The Red Phantom. Red with rage. This is referring to writer Marco Spinelli. But these are often debated about whether or not they were genuinely from the same person. However, due to the signature The Red Phantom, Richard Marshall now became a suspect. He had allegedly privately hinted at having killed someone in the past. He lived in the area during the time and was a big enthusiast for silent films. He had even screened the 1907 movie The Red Phantom in the past. Detectives did look into him, but found no convincing evidence, and he was soon discarded as a suspect. Things began to go quiet again for 4 more years before allegedly the man returned once again. Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. I am back with you. Tell Herb Kane I am here. I have always been here. That city pig Toshi is good, but I am smarter and better. He will get tired, then leave me alone. I am waiting for a good movie about me. Who will play me? I am now in control of all things. Yours truly. However, the legitimacy of this letter was quickly called into question. It was even believed that homicide detective Dave Toshi had forged it himself. Toshi had received a letter 2 years earlier praising him for his work, and it was believed to have been from a fan, but Toshi later admitted that he wrote it himself, though he denied writing the second one from the supposed Zodiac, and it remains unsolved. Over the years, many suspects have been added and discarded, but Kathleen Johns spent more time with the killer than anyone, and she was able to pick out Lawrence Kane as the culprit in a photo lineup. One of the officers who believed they saw the killer that day during the misunderstanding confirmed that Kane did closely resemble him more than any other suspect he had seen over the years. Kane did work at the same hotel as Donna Lass and had only just moved into the area around the same time she went missing. He was diagnosed with impulse control disorder after suffering brain injuries during an accident in 1962. His name can actually be found in the code, allegedly giving away the killer's identity. Furthermore, in that same code, there's 3 8s with circles around them. 3 times 8 is 24, which is the year that Kane was born. Also, the sister of Darlene Ferrin claimed that Lawrence Kane was the man who followed and harassed Darlene weeks before she was killed, and he did live very close to many of the murder locations. He was arrested for voyeurism and prowling, but has never been found guilty of being the Zodiac. Charles Manson family cult member Bruce Davis was even accused of being the Zodiac, as was every male member of the family as they were local, but no evidence linked any of them to the attacks, and they were soon ruled out. In 1996, Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, was investigated as he worked in Northern California at the time, and he had a similar interest in cryptography. Furthermore, he had also threatened the press into publishing his communications. However, his fingerprints and handwriting didn't match the letters, and it was proven he wasn't even in California at the time of some of the murders. In July 2002, in Eastlake, Ohio, Robert Ivan Nichols, or Joseph Newton Chandler III, who was a previously unidentified man, committed suicide. The police attempted to locate his family after his death, but failed to do so, and found out that he had actually stolen the identity of an 8-year-old boy who died in a car crash in Texas in 1945. He often stole identities to remain hidden, and this led investigators to believe that he was a violent fugitive. He also lived in California and did resemble the composite sketches, leading some to believe that he was responsible. In April 2004, the San Francisco Police Department finally closed the case after 36 years, though it would later reopen just 3 years afterwards. On March 3, 2007, a Christmas card was found, dated from 1990. It was rediscovered with 2 US postal keys on a keychain, and the writing on the envelope did match the Zodiac, and forensic examiners considered it to be the same person, though others dispute this. From your secret pal, can't guess who I am yet? Well, look inside and you'll find out. That I'm gonna keep you guessing. Happy holidays anyway. That same year, Dennis Kaufman claimed that his father, Jack Tarrance, was the Zodiac Killer. He even handed some of his father's belongings over to the FBI, including a hood similar to the one worn by the killer. The FBI analysed the DNA, but it came back inconclusive, and this remains a mystery. In 2009, former lawyer Robert Tarbox claimed that in the early 70s, a merchant mariner had actually walked into his office and confessed to being the Zodiac. Tarbox knew the man's name but refused to give it out of confidentiality. He claims that the man was able to describe the crimes with great detail, to the point that he believed it was all legitimate. The man claimed he was trying to control himself in order to stop killing, but Tarbox would never see him again. He only decided to speak out to try to clear the name of Arthur Lee Allen, and some believe this story, finding it entirely plausible. That same year, newspaper editor Richard Gaykowski became a suspect. At the time, he worked for the San Francisco Good Times newspaper. He resembled the composite sketch, and a police dispatcher at the time who spoke to the Zodiac did claim that it was Gaykowski's voice. Retired police detective Steve Hodel claimed that his father George was the man who killed Black Dahlia, but he went on to claim that he was also the Zodiac Killer based on the composite sketch and the similarities between the Zodiac letters and the Black Dahlia letters, but this theory would be followed no further. On February the 19th, 2011, a photo emerged of Darlene Ferrin standing with an unidentified man, who does look an awful lot like the composite sketch of the Zodiac Killer. It's believed that this may have actually been the man who murdered her, but his identity remains a mystery. Convicted serial killer Edward Edwards was also linked to the murders, as he had killed 5 people between 1977 and 1996, but not much more investigation was done in order to back up this theory. Former officer Lyndon Lafferty claimed that the killer was a 91-year-old man, but refused to identify him publicly. The man was investigated, but he passed away in February 2012 and was never identified, as he wasn't considered a suspect. In February 2014, it was discovered that Louis Joseph Myers had allegedly confessed to a friend 13 years earlier that he was the Zodiac Killer. He only confessed after finding out that he was dying from cirrhosis of the liver, asking his friend Randy Kennedy to inform the police after his death. Myers died in 2002, but Kennedy claims he tried to talk to the police, but they refused to cooperate or take the claim seriously. Myers did attend the same high school as David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, worked in the same restaurant as Darlene Ferrin, and he was even stationed overseas with the military during the 3-year period, when the press received no letters from the killer. Kennedy claimed that Myers only murdered couples because he was angry over a bad breakup he was going through. Officers did consider this theory, but not much evidence has came out to back it up further. That same year, Gary Stewart published a book and claimed that during his search for his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., he believed that he was actually the killer. Not only does he bear a strong resemblance to the composite sketch, but his name even matches the number of characters in the code, supposedly revealing the killer's identity. Furthermore, his handwriting was analysed, and an expert believed it matches the Zodiac Killer's almost entirely. However, Best's handwriting that was analysed was from his marriage certificate, and it turned out this was actually the handwriting of the priest and not his own. Gary Stewart did try to get his father's DNA compared to the killer's, but the police never did this, as there was no evidence for them to need to do so. Another theory is that there were actually 2 killers. The initial Zodiac murderer, and the others were simply a copycat, reenacting the attacks. Though another theory is that the murders were completely unconnected to any of the letters, and were just random killings. It's believed that the letters could have just been written by people trying to take credit for them, when in reality they had nothing to do with them, and the murders weren't even done by the same people. Could it be true? Were these just completely random acts of rage by different people? Or was this a carefully calculated list of attacks by an individual or individuals, desperately trying to make a name for themselves? It has been 53 years since the Zodiac's first confirmed attack, and after decades of speculation, codes left uncracked, questions left unanswered, and suspects left unconfirmed, we are still seeking answers.